Go to the, let's go to this one. So it's actually, this slide is for, okay. Okay, so we can go, so thank you, there we go. We'll work on the development of, we'll work with the subgroups to frame the development of recommendations in real time. The work group chairs and co-chairs, you are empowered to bring in outside resource members to provide expertise to your work groups. While all of the various, the 5 work groups are certainly knowledgeable, there may be opportunities when you want to bring in, again, some expertise from outside of the work group. So you do have that capability of doing so. And work on subcommittees, we'll focus on the subcommittee categories. So next slide. So the organizational chart is in draft form, and you're going to hear more about that because it will no longer become draft form, hopefully after today's meeting. We are asking that the final review of this be seen by the Chief of Staff, and we will also have discussion with the subcommittee chairs and the Deputy Chief Administrative Officers. Next. So this is actually a sample draft of meeting schedule frequency. And this is based on somewhat of what we are using for the Path Forward Task Force. So the full working group will meet bi-weekly, and the co-chairs and subcommittee chairs will alternate on the other weeks, so that we're not having multiple meetings throughout the 1 week. The work groups will meet bi-weekly. There may be opportunities for the co-chairs to meet with county leadership, including the county executive and the chief of staff. That will be on an as-needed basis. But we want to make sure that enough time is allowed for the subcommittees to be able to do the work so that by October 30th, you are prepared to make an initial report. And again, the Police Reform Task Force staff planning team meet as needed. Delegate Washington and Judge Lamassney, they run a tight ship, and we have been meeting with them in terms of trying to make sure that we have enough staff to support the endeavor. So we may have had to meet weekly trying to get to this point. But again, this is just a sample. The work group chairs can decide when they meet. We will also look at trying to develop a calendar because some staff may be working on multiple committees, but we certainly want to make sure that we provide you with the support that is needed. Next.
Ms. Miriam, can I hop in there? Can I hop in there real quick?
You certainly can.
Thank you, ma'am. And Judge, also feel free whenever you want to hop into. Again, as Ms. Miriam mentioned, this is just a sample of what we're trying to do. This is a sample from the much larger work group that the county executive has put on. So they have ample amount of time to do their work. We have a limited amount of time. So our meetings might come more often than bi-weekly. You might meet every so often. So just keep that in mind as we move forward, because we only have 60 some odd days or more to really get our recommendations done and and be able to do our work diligently. So I just wanted to say that this is just a sample. So do not think that that's what it is right now. Okay.
Yes, and thank you for reaffirming that. After tonight, you can really put some concrete measures to this. This again is just a guide, but you will need to meet as often as you see fit to be able to complete the task by October 30th. Next. Next slide.
Not moving. Mary, you can keep going. You keep talking though. We know what you're doing.
So let me see, where was I? So there we go. This is a sample or a draft timeline. Again, we know that the final report is due October 30th. The subcommittees were finalized on August 4th, and Delegate Washington will have some discussion and will be able to provide some additional guidance on that. It is suggested, again, because of the short time period in which you need to complete this task, that you develop benchmarks, and your benchmarks may be in 15, 30, 45 days. And because we are a little more than 60, we're more than 60 days out, but so that you will be able to gauge where you are to meet the guideline or meet the deadline of October 30th. You may look at intermediate recommendations that can be implemented within 4 to 6 months, and long-term recommendations, which of course will be implemented beyond 6 months. There may be some short-term ones that actually can be implemented before that, but again, looking at intermediate and long-term recommendations. Next. Okay, and so the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer and Work Group Chair will review the structure. And again, Delegate Washington and Judge Lemassney have done a fantastic job in developing the structure. And again, you will hear more about that. And you will also hear about the assignments. So we are here to support you. Those are our action items that we want to make sure that you are aware of. And the next slide, we'll talk about where we are so far. We have published a police reform website, or I really should say a web page. We also have a repository for documents. It is in the Teams folder, and hopefully you have started to familiarize yourself with Teams. And also, as a part of our support, we have developed templates for meeting notices and reports. You can look at those, and those will be shared with the delegate and the judge to see if it will meet your needs. But we don't want you to have to start from scratch in terms of having some type of templates for reporting. And the goal is for all of the work groups their reports to be in the same format, so that it would be easier. It should be easy when it is time to complete the final report, that everything is in a similar format. And one thing we will need to talk about is the writing of the final report, and we can get to that a little later, but this is just a framework for you to consider, and I am open for questions.
Okay, anyone has any questions? Seeing none, I don't see anything in the chat just yet. So that's kind of the structure of how these work groups are going to work and how we're going to do our work. The schedule is still being drafted right now. It's a lot of work that goes through that. Lieutenant Harvin, do you mind sharing the work group? Because I can't share my screen on here. Do you mind sharing the work group? The work group
Yes.
breakdown for everybody, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can get it.
And so, Judge, You can do the first group and I'll go to the second group and we can name individuals that we want to, that we have in there in the subject areas. If you like.
Okay, that's fine, whatever.
Yep. And so I think we're gonna have those hold up for you first. And then so here's our first group. Judge, all you.
All right, our first group, employee recruiting and retention. Our chairperson is Chris Marsh, and other members, George Askew, Sonia Pruitt, Dwayne Preston, and Donnell Turner. And some of the specific focus areas: recruiting, hiring, training, promotions and incentives, human resources, and mental health.
Okay, our second group we have is the independent, going up just a little far from me. Let's see if I can move this thing out the way. Okay, the second work group is independent oversight, compliance, and integrity. As you can see, Delegate Juanica Fisher will chair that committee. The other members of the committee are Keith Lottridge, Bob Ross, and Orlando Barnes. The subject areas include the Inspector General's Office, Internal Affairs, Civilian Review Boards, Discipline and Misconduct, Trial Boards, Data Collection and Evaluations, Racial Equity, Audits, and Anti-Discriminatory Practices. And we did want to include in there gender equality as well in that subject area.
All right, the next subcommittee is internal policies and county regulations. The chair of that is Glenn Ivey. He has an all-star legal team: Joe Ruddy, Lamy Gutierrez, and Judge Alexander Williams. And the focus of that subcommittee: mission and vision, policies, practices, and general orders, use of force, statute and complaints, gang units and registry, body cameras, police tactics, the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, municipalities, and consent decrees.
Okay, and our next group will be our community engagement and quality services, and everyone is an all-star here. And so we wanted to, I wanted to recognize Miss Felix Florence Lawson. That's all incorrect. Miss Florence Felix Lawson, chair, and Tara Jackson will be on that committee. James Robinson and Josephine Morning. So that's Florence Felix Lawson. Sorry for that. I don't know how that messed up, Florence. The subject areas are community-oriented approach to public safety, community complaints, social health and family services, community resources or community policing, resource officers and community policing, school resource officers, calls for service, community empowerment and public information, and youth involvement.
And our last group is financial management, excuse me. And the chair of that is Judy Danso. With her is another all-star team: Crystal Omaha, Archie Pruitt, and Rodney, Strutter. Sorry for the names. And they will deal with budget accreditations, liability insurance, union contract, technology, lawsuits, and external contracts.
Okay, well, you can unshare that, and we'll send this out to everybody so everyone has a copy of that. So those are our work groups. And talk to us, the judge and I, if you have any questions about your committee assignment. But we try to go off of everybody's expertise and where they are and the questions that you sent in to us, some interest that you might have wanted to be a part of. And so, and just FYI, and just so everybody knows, the judge and I will serve will serve on each committee. So we will be part of each and every one of the work groups. And so we'll be attending those meetings and chiming in and being active in those meetings too, with you to provide support, because some are uneven. Others have 5, others have 4. So we thought the judge and I would be good to have on both of those. I see Crystal Oriata has a question.
And I just wanted to circle back, and I think we answered this in the first meeting, but we can all sit in on any of the meetings if it fits with our calendar, even if we're not in that committee, correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you're a member of the committee, you can sit in on a committee. You just can't take a vote for that subject matter for that meeting or any points on there. Only the judge and I can do that. Any other questions? Seeing now, I want to thank all the cheers because you guys are going to do a lot of hard work. I think we told you that over the phone, but we're excited to have you and have everyone a part of this effort and trying to dive a little bit more deeper into some of these policies. So thank you all. And I did want to recognize Miss Sadia Noah Hope. If you can introduce yourself, because you're going to be our advising attorney with us from the Office of Law. So can you introduce yourself for us, please? And I'm sorry if I said your name incorrectly.
That's fine. Hi, everybody. I'm Sadia Noah Hope. Sorry, I have two. Let me cut one of these off.
You're muted.
Yep. Well, we can come back to you at a point when you're ready. Okay. But I did want to recognize you because you'll be our attorney and advising us to make sure that we don't cross the line and advising us on any legal matters that we can and cannot cover as a committee. Okay. With that said, I think the next topic that we're going to be discussing is OHRM, the Office of Human Resources. And I wanted to welcome them back up. And I know that they have a slide presentation with us.
We do. Thank you.
Ms. Stokes, thank you.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I actually am not going to be doing the presentation, but just really wanted to thank the task force for allowing us to come together to present to you our overall end-to-end hiring process and practices. I would definitely say this is a collaborative effort. So we worked really hard over the last couple of days with the police department and staff from my team to pull together this presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Conrad Samuels, who is the Associate Director for Talent Acquisition for the county. And I believe from the police department, we have Lieutenant Bath, as well as Lieutenant Falbles, hopefully I said it correctly, who will be co-presenting from the police department. So with that, Conrad, I think you are probably ready to share the presentation, correct?
I am. Good afternoon, everyone.
But before we go on, one second, Sean, can you properly introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. I am Sean Stokes, the Director for the Office of Human Resources. So again, a pleasure to meet everyone.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Conrad Samuels, Associate Director from the Prince George's County Office of Human Resources Management. And if I'd like to request permission to share my screen, it's saying the host is disabled, the participant sharing.
Stand by, please.
Okay.
Ronaldo, do you have that?
I don't have any files, but I will check with Jonathan.
Well, I think asking for us to be is to be a host so he can share his screen.
Or at least the participant, enable the participant to share the screen, even if it doesn't transition to host.
You are now a host, sir.
Okay. All right. All right, please confirm if you're able to see the screen.
You're not.
I'm sorry, are you?
We cannot see the screen yet. No.
Okay.
No.
Do you think we should share it with Charmaine and then maybe she can bring it up? I don't know if that's easier.
Conrad, did you have the share button at the bottom of your screen?
There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, I think we're set.
Well,
Okay.
it's actually showing the meeting invite, Conrad, not the presentation.
It's saying I'm sharing and I've got the presentation.
Conrad, do you have multiple monitors?
I do.
Okay, so when you click the share screen button, there should be a upward facing arrow next to that button. You want to, when you click share screen, you should be able to pick whether you're sharing a specific program or your entire screen. So if you click the program, you should be able to click the specific one that's showing the presentation you're trying to share.
Let's do this. So share my calendar, but that's
Yeah, no, that's not it again. No. It might be easier just because Charmaine is one of the like super hosts. Maybe we just send it to her and have her share it, I guess.
Yes, if you could send it to me by email, I can pull it up real quickly.
And that's Charmaine Harvin, Conrad.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, let's just do this real quick. Does anybody have any questions? Any of the members on the work group have any questions? Just FYI, we also sent you an email with some of the answers to your questions from the police department. They were grateful enough they were good enough to send us the questions ahead of time with some documents, some supporting documents too. Miss Noah Hope, you have an opportunity. You want to introduce yourself right now to everybody? See if it works this time.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. I have children in the background, so I had to keep it muted. But hi, everybody. My name is Sadia Noah Hope. I'm currently with the Office of Law, and I will be working with the work group. So I'm here to answer any questions you have, any legal research you need. Look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. So does that mean you'll be our library of resources and of sources for us?
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Delegate Washington, do we wait at this point for the chair of our subcommittee to reach out to us to coordinate a meeting? And I apologize if you hear a crying baby in the background.
No need to apologize first, because Ms. Hope just did it as well. No, you can you can reach out to them directly. I will reach out to them directly and try to figure out what their schedule is going to be. We're going to have a meeting amongst all of us, all the chairs, to figure out what their schedules will look like in the next coming months, because we want to plan accordingly to make sure that we meet our benchmarks and to develop those benchmarks too, because we only have a limited amount of time. So we're going to try to get started on that as soon as we possibly can. So yes, reach out to your work group chair and reach out to us too. I haven't got many phone calls from people, but trust me, I have all your numbers, so I'll be calling you. And I see Mr. Samuels is ready, so Mr. Samuels, all you.
Perfect. All right, thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Harvin. Good evening again, everyone. My name is Conrad Samuels, and I'll be covering in partnership and collaboration, I should say, with our Lieutenant Bath from the police department, also Lieutenant Fowles, who will be collectively covering a series of topics, all related to the recruitment, sourcing, background, selection, and the promotional process for entry-level police positions. All right, if we can go to the agenda. So we'll jump into an executive summary where I'll provide an overview of the information that will be covered. We're going to discuss hiring goals. Again, as I mentioned, recruitment, screening and selection process. We'll provide you with a flow chart so you're able to see the actual progression that a candidate goes through for the hiring process. We'll follow that with actual data from 2018, 2019, and 2020 that obviously goes along with the flow chart. We'll cover the applicant, and hire information, as well as successes and some opportunities in those areas. And then we'll wrap up with the promotional process, some thoughts, recommendations, and certainly respond to any questions that you might have. All right, thank you. And is everyone okay? You're able to see? Do we need to go to a slide view, or we're fine? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so as a background, the police department focuses on recruitment, screening, and hiring candidates. This is critical part of the process of certainly attracting talent for the county. We want to cover that today and provide good information for all the stakeholders who are involved. So you're able to actually listen, provide or do what the task or the work group is charged with doing, and providing your input and expertise based on the information we share. From a county perspective, we seek to attract, develop, and retain the best talent. We know the critical role the public safety individuals and police officers share, so we'll provide information, I think, to help and give you some insight on that. The county seeks to recruit applicants who are dedicated, focused, and those who are looking for growth and development, because this is seen as a career opportunity, obviously not just a job. So a lot of our processes are designed in such a fashion to attract and hire the best candidate and develop them as they continue in their careers. All right, for today, our objectives are to provide an overview of, as I mentioned, the talent acquisition process, specifically with a focus on entry-level positions. We're going to share applicant and hiring data, as I mentioned, and then discuss some of the steps within the process, and you'll get a chance to see the impact of screening in that process, and also the impact from a diversity perspective as it relates to hiring. And then next, again, we'll look at the promotional process, and again, the tools that impact the selection and screening there. Key points that we'll cover today and go over will be recruitment and sourcing, as I mentioned, screening and selection. You'll see the flow chart, the hiring data, and again, promotional and the recruitment efforts that are currently being engaged in collaboration with the police department. All right, next slide, please. All right, so just some background in our goals. Two primary goals from a recruitment or talent acquisition perspective for the county. Certainly, we're looking to attract and hire the best talent for these career opportunities. But more specifically, we want to meet annual hiring goals. There are specific hiring goals that the department has, that OHRM has, and we want to collaborate with the police department and ensure we're meeting those goals with high quality candidates. But it's not only a numbers piece in meeting the goals, there's a diversity component, which also is linked to the quality of candidates. So we're looking to increase the diversity of the hires, ensure the public safety agencies are a representation of the communities in which they serve. Again, for this focus of today, we're looking at the entry-level police officer, but other roles that are typically posted and we fill positions for, includes the experienced police officer, the comparative compliance piece. We have police cadets, school crossing guards, and also security officers. And these positions are typically posted July 1st until June 30th of the next year. So that kind of gives you the first insight into the process, in that these postings are continuous. So we're able to kind of work the process, select and screen candidates as we go through the calendar year for the classes that we have. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so candidate sourcing and recruitment. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Lieutenant Fowles.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Fobel. I'm the recruiting commander for Prince George's County Police Department. What I'm going to discuss right now is our police recruiters, the sourcing activities. Prince George's County employment website is what folks can go on to if they're looking for a position within the police department. Once they go onto that website, they then click on, which is a little tab that says pgpolice.org to apply. They will click onto that, and that begins the process of filling out the application for the position of police officer. Different things that we use, we have a police cadet program that is in collaboration with Prince George's Community College. It's I'm kind of a baseball guy, so we kind of look at it as like the AAA, the farm system for the police department. You have to have a GPA of 2.5 or better to get into the program. We pay the young people $24,000 a year. They get a associate's degree with PG Community College, and upon graduation, they will then move on to becoming a police officer with us, go through our academy and become a police officer. We constantly are recruiting through the military bases within the state of Maryland, our bordering states. We have a recruiting liaison, military recruiting liaison officer within my office who reaches out to them, post ads, post the job announcements. We have a very good working relationship with Andrews Air Force Base, Fort Meade, Aberdeen. There's a Dover where we're constantly being in contact with those people, trying to let them know that we are hiring, that we are interested in them. The social media, we have Facebook, Twitter. We work in collaboration with Media Relations Division. They put out events that we're either conducting or to let them know what we're doing currently and that we are also hiring. The signage throughout the county roadways, those are those solar panel boards you'll see sometimes where it says road construction, but we also have those as well. And we have them, we move them around, we place them on different major thoroughfares and roadways for folks to see that, hey, we are hiring. We're looking for you. College fairs, we're constantly going, well, not now because due to COVID, but prior to that, University of Maryland, PG Community College, Bowie State, Morgan State, Coppin State, Howard University. We've gone to the college fairs with them and trying to recruit. And I guess that kind of goes along with the job recruitment fairs, same type of thing. We're constantly going to those. We have a nice little setup that we have things, handouts that we give out that says that we're hiring. We have iPads that are wireless that they can apply right there on the spot while they're standing there right in front of us. The pop-up events, shopping centers and gyms, that's us if we don't have a job fair, we just go out into the community. We'll go to the shopping centers and just the recruiters will walk around and with their iPads. So if someone is interested, they'll also have brochures on the agency with our benefits and what we offer, and try to recruit right there on the spot. Diversity recruitment fairs, we've Career Builders DC, Job Zone Baltimore, Women for Hire. We've gone and set up at those events as well. The community events, National Night Out, Riverdale Baptist, where we go to the different events that the churches will hold. We work with Community Service Division to participate and assist with them, and they also in return help us out as well. If you want to go to the next slide, Mr. Samuels.
Can we go to the next slide, please? All right.
Okay, so once we get somebody that has applied, what we do from there is, so we see that step one, application, written exam, and agility test. If you can go to the next one, Mr. Samuels, and then we'll bounce back. So once the person goes on www.pgpolice.org and apply, there's a screening that's a objectively screening process that is built into the website. So, and what they're looking for is minimum qualifications. Your age, you have to be 21 years old, U.S. citizenship, and high school diploma or GED. Once they go to that point, then we'll get notified that we have a person who is interested. Then we reach out and contact them. And what we do from there is we then sign them up for our APRT, which is the applicant physical requirement test. So they will go and do that test with us. And then once they pass the APRT, it'll move on to is the written exam, which you need a 70 percentile or better to pass. the APRT and the written exam, once you apply and you are into that portion, it's good for 1 year. If they were to fail the first time, they get a second chance at taking the test. If they fail it 2 times within the year, then they have to reapply. Once we get done with that part, then once they pass the APRT, once they pass the written examination, then they move on to the background investigation portion of the hiring process. Any questions?
I believe there was a question. Mr. Streeter, did you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Wanted to go back to, I wanted to know how aggressive you are at sort of cultivating the next generation of the young people, particularly coming from Prince George's County, to eventually end up on the force. And are there points given to residents, Prince George's County?
Some of it's breaking up. Is there a preference? No, there is not.
There's not. Yeah, I guess you didn't hear the other part of the question, but wanted to know how we wanted to hear a little bit about how we are cultivating the next generation of police officers in Prince George's County. You mentioned the cadet program. Are there other efforts that you're doing to make sure that residents here have an interest in joining the force?
Yes, sir. We also have the Police Explorer program, which is from 13 to 21 years old. We also have the Junior Police Explorer program, which is the 6-year-olds to the 12-year-olds.
Okay. What percentage of the force are people who come from those programs?
I will have to get back to you on that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I believe Pastor Robinson has a question. Pastor.
Yes, please. I took a look at the PowerPoint presentation that you gave the last time we met. It's a pretty long and arduous process. One of the questions I have is, how long does it take an applicant to get through this process? And once through the process and after the investigation unit, it goes to the deputy chiefs for a final decision. How long does it take an applicant to get through this entire process?
From point A, from filling out the application process to point of being offered a position, it's approximately 3 months.
3 months, because it almost appeared as I was looking at it, it almost appeared like it was a bottleneck there, depending on how much staff you have in order to get them through this process. Do you have what's the staff makeup in going through this process?
What is the staff of my recruiting division?
Yeah. Yes.
It's myself, and then I have a sergeant, and then 6 persons underneath them.
Okay. And then once approved, it goes to the deputy chiefs. Now, I didn't see any criteria for the deputy chiefs. What kind of criteria do they make for the final decision on this?
I'll have to refer to that.
If I could jump in, Pastor Robinson. At that time, the investigators there's a report of investigation, and the complete case file is actually reviewed by myself, and then it's actually presented to the other deputy chiefs within the Bureau of Patrol, Bureau of Forensic Sciences, and the Bureau of Investigation. At that time, we're allowed to ask questions of the investigator, and then there's a vote to determine if we're going to actually hire the individual.
Now, that vote is based upon, you said you asked questions, but it's based upon what?
It's based on a report of investigation and what the investigator found, the review of the applicant file. So some of the things that may cause a person to quote unquote be non-selected is, say the person's 21 and has an extensive driving record. That may or may not play a part in that person being selected to become a police officer. We may determine at that time that that person should wait and apply within the next year. So we look at a combination of everything, education, field interviews that were conducted, and that's what we make our determination on.
And my final question, the oral board, what does that consist of?
You made the determination. It'll
Yeah, there's what is it,
determination is
assessment?
based on whether the person is approved or non-selected. So based on the review of the report of investigation, we'll do a vote. So and we'll go around to each deputy chief. They're given an opportunity to ask questions, additional questions about the applicant. And from there, we'll see if the applicant meets our criteria to become a Prince George's County police officer. Obviously, they must meet all the minimum standards before the Maryland Police and Corrections Training Institution, and then we go from there.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. We have questions from Ms. Pruitt, then Ms. Danso, and then Ms. Oriata.
Good evening, everyone. My question is steps 2 through 5 are places where typically an applicant is more easily written out due to subjectivity of the investigator. So my question is, how do you control for that? Because what I'm hearing is that there's a report that's given to the director, the deputy chiefs all meet, they interview the investigator, and then there's a vote. But how are you controlling for the subjectivity in steps after step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Ms. Pruitt, what I will do is, if you can give me a few minutes, let me run through the steps 2 through 8, so we can clarify on what's the rest of the process
No,
contains.
I don't need that. I understand the steps. What I'm asking is, how do you keep your investigators from having their biases enter into the process? And very short story, when I applied to Prince George's County, I was written out because of my eyesight, although my eyesight was corrected to 2020. So I got written out at step 2 many years ago, of course. But what I'm asking is, how do you, is there a spot check? How do you control for your investigators' biases entering into the process?
In order to answer this question, we still have to clarify on the rest of the process. We only spoke about the written exam.
All right, Ms. Pruitt, why don't you let him finish his presentation, and then we'll get back.
I can't hear. There's background noise.
Ms. Pruitt, if I can just interject, powers check, we go by the Comar Manor and MPCTC. Those are the guidelines and standards that we utilize in every applicant, compared to every applicant that applies to our agency. So those are the guidelines that we follow in order for that file to proceed all the way up to the deputy chief. So that's where we use those objective guidelines to determine. Now, if a person doesn't get cleared, say for any number of medical reasons, at that point, that person obviously wouldn't continue through the process. So again, MPCTC are the guidelines that we utilize. Each investigator follows, and then there's a series of checks and balances along the way to ensure that that investigator can compare whatever findings to MPCTC guidelines. It's a cross check to avoid any type of detective bias.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Ms. Danso?
Yes, Judge, thank you. My question is actually a follow-up to Councilman Streeter's question, a little more specific in terms of the recruitment process. What, if any, efforts or I guess thoughts or consideration have been given to recruitment fairs at the high school level, particularly to attract, our young folks and engage them to have some interest in becoming members of our department, and certainly reinvesting in our youth to have, representation of, our community as a part of our force. Has there been any, conversation or any efforts that reflect recruitment at that level? That's my question.
Sorry about that. I had it on mute. Yes, absolutely. That is like I said earlier, that the cadet program is, in my opinion, like the AAA for baseball. We were in the schools. We go to the football games, basketball games. We set up with outside the gymnasiums to talk, to engage with the young folks, to try to get them to become a cadet, and also to become more part of the community. That's why we're at the games, So we are, I hope that answers your question. We are definitely doing that because that's the way, that's how we get our cadets involved.
Thank you. Ms. Oriata, you have a question? I think that was the last one.
Yes, I do. I just want to first echo the sentiments that Ms. Pruitt brought up. It definitely seems like a subjective process. I'm interested to hear the rest of your presentation and see if that can be cleared up. But on the last part, when you're talking about the vote, and I'm just curious, does each person have to clarify or why they voted yes or no, each individual, for the reason why they're voting that person down?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, that's actually noted in the file as well, and the investigator, that's in the investigative notes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Ms. Morning, I believe you have a question, ma'am.
Yes, I do. First, I would like to know when we're out recruiting, are there incentives being offered to prospective cadets? By incentives, meaning that in educational wise, continuing education, is there some type of program that's offered through the police department where they can also continue, I would say, more like improve their law enforcement skills by going to, I would say, Prince George's Community College or things like that? Are there incentives offered to them? Are there bonuses, signing bonuses offered to them as we're doing the recruitment?
To answer your question, ma'am, no, and I wish there was, because it would really help us, I think, attract more people. If we did have signing bonuses, I do believe it would be a big incentive. The things that we do have is our benefit package, take-home car program. If you live in the county, you would get a cruiser assigned to you that you can take home every day, as long as you live in the county. And then the rest of our benefit package that we offer.
But no educational opportunities to advance?
Not
Do
at this
they have to pay for it? I mean, is there a discount on tuition for them to advance in the police department through higher educational institutes?
Not at this time, ma'am, no.
Oh.
All right, thank you. Why don't we let the officer finish his presentation?
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Lieutenant Bath with the Prince George's County Background Investigations Unit. I'm in charge of the background investigations when the applicants have cleared their written exam and they have been given the forms to fill out, then the file is under my command at my office. I have one officer in charge who is a sergeant, and I have one case manager and 4 background investigators. I have 3 civilian investigators. So this is my team. And once the file gets to my office, we go ahead and do our preliminary screening, and we will check the file for any mistakes or anything which is not filled properly. After the preliminary screening, there's an initial interview which we schedule with the applicant. That initial interview lasts about 2 to 3 hours. That's one-on-one interview. And during that interview, we build a report with the applicant. And during that interview, we gather all the required documents, which are basic requirement set by MPCTC, which is a Maryland Police Correction Training and Commission. So they are the ones who set up the standards, and all our reviews are based on those standards. So once we obtain all the required documents, which are required for you to justify that you are a US citizen, you have a valid driver's license, then you have income tax returns and all that stuff which we require as part of that, then we will go ahead and schedule that person for polygraph, psychological examination, oral board, and then medical examination, and also the ride-along. So polygraph and psychological examination are the 2 big points here. When the person go through these, They are hosted by the staff, which falls under Public Safety Investigations, which is also the part of Prince George's County in the OHRM side. So during that step, so what we do in the polygraph, it's a one-on-one interaction with the polygrapher, and they gives us the result of pass or fail based on set of questions which are being asked. Then the next step is the psychological examination. That is also a pass and fail. Then the results are given to the investigator after the one-on-one interview is finished. Oral board is basically a one-on-one interview with a board containing diverse, 3 officers from different ranks with diversity in them. And the candidates will come in and they will have a one-on-one interview, which lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. And during that interview, an OHRM representative is present all the time in the room to make sure we are following all the rules and regulations of the human resources. And after that oral board, we go ahead and schedule a ride-along. Ride-along is basically full riding with an officer in their marked cruiser and for a 10-hour shift. During that ride-along period, we give the candidates a first-hand experience of what a police officer's job looks like. Maybe sometimes people have different kind of perception, but when they sit in that front seat of the cruiser, they get the clear picture of what they are trying to accomplish or what career are they trying to choose. After that ride-along, we wait for the medical examination. We set them up, and that's basically conducted by Concentra, which is also a Prince George's County unit. And once the file is completed, during this whole process, when all these appointments are going on, our investigators, they are conducting their background investigation, which is basically whatever references, domestic interviews, all the neighbors, whatever names are given to us by the candidate, we go ahead and make contact with them and try to know our candidate more. And then our investigator prepare a summary file at the end, which is a summary report with everything. We make sure that everything is filled out, employment, domestic inquiries, and then we also make sure that we talk to the neighbors. And we also try to find some, like we go knock on more doors. We just want to know our person better. And then we will present this file to OIC, which is the sergeant of my unit. Sergeant will go ahead and review the file for completeness. If there are any errors, if something is missing, all the documents are completed, fingerprints returns have came back, agency checks are done, and the criminal histories are run, the MVA checks are done. So once the file is completed from OIC's desk, that file moves to Commander of Background Investigation, that's me on my desk. So I act like a peer reviewer. So I basically double the effort of our sergeant to make sure there are no mistakes made during the process by the investigator. So once the file is completed, the file is then presented to our deputy chief. Our deputy chief conducts a third review, which is also to triple the effort to make sure that everything is correct in the file and all the rules and standards are being followed. After that, we will go ahead and schedule a deputy chief review, which consists of all the deputy chiefs for the police department. And then at that point, we present every single file. And if there are any points which we need to discuss, we have investigator who has done the firsthand work on this present in the room. And that investigator is there to answer all the questions or any questions which our deputy chiefs have. Once the file crosses that desk, when it's passed, then it's given to our Office of to Police Personnel Division for hiring. So during that time, we start our hiring process. If our academy is still far away, 2-3 months far away, we try to pre-hire the candidate to make sure that they don't go to a different jurisdiction, because candidates who apply to become a police officer, they always put in applications to multiple jurisdictions. And we want to make sure that we are the first ones to pick up that person before losing that person to a different department. So that's why we try to pre-hire that person. So this is basically the entire process for background.
Okay. All right. Next, we will cover the applicant and hiring data. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we've got applicant and hiring demographical information for 2020 or fiscal year 2019 and 18. Right, the first slide is going over information from fiscal year 20. As you can see, we have a high number of applicants or people that apply or express an interest in our positions. A small fraction of those people are hired, and we are going to talk more about that. But this slide covers a breakdown of the applicants, race, applicants by race, the hires, and then the hiring percentages. So as you can see in 2000 or for fiscal year 2020, this year, and we think we only had one class this year, given what's happened recently with the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a total of 1,469 people who'd applied and only 40 who'd actually gone through the process and were hired. What we've seen, you'll see that in a little bit, is a significant amount of people actually are not responsive to some of the next steps in the process. That is one of the contributing factors, but there are specific things that Deputy Chief Harvin and his team are doing to improve that. The numbers from 2020, believe it or not, are actually improved from 2018 and 2019 in terms of hires relative to the number of applicants. What is consistent as we look at the hires, in those 3 years, diverse or minority applicants, we have more of those applicants than non-minority applicants. All right, as you can see in in fiscal year 20, we had 883 Black or African-American applicants. 15 of those were hired. You see the number for Hispanic applicants and also for white applicants. African-Americans comprise a significant percent of the candidate pool and certainly a much lower number percentage of the hires. All right, diverse candidates overall, again, comprise a significant percentage of the candidate pool, 77% for fiscal year 2020. But overall, as you can see, based on the hiring of Hispanic and also Asian candidates, the percentage of hired candidates is relatively close to the percentage of those diverse candidates in the applicant pool. For non-diverse or white applicants for this year, there were 18% of the applicant pool and comprised 28% of the hires. And we saw that of the 1,469, 66 candidates elected not to disclose their race. Okay. I'll go to fiscal year 19. Similar in terms of numbers, a significant amount of candidates have applied. And again, we'll touch on the reasons that candidates didn't make it through, so we'll get to that. But a significant amount of candidates applied, relatively small amount of candidates obviously were hired. The diversity of those candidates that are hired, that is certainly, I think, one positive outlook on this. There's diversity within those that are hired, right? Where there is a tremendous opportunity for improvement is hiring relative to the percentage of those candidates who apply. So while as you look at, let's say, fiscal year 19, 10 non-minority or white candidates were hired from 367 candidates. A similar number, 9 were hired from over 1,100 candidates who are Black or African-American. So again, ultimately the hires that we're getting, there's diversity within the hires, but we've got to work together, and we'll do that collaboratively, where overall, I would say a higher percentage of the applicants that are people who apply are hired, and then keep that diversity mix certainly that we have. All right, I'll go to fiscal year 18. Again, the numbers are similar. There are more candidates this year and also more hires in 2018, right? The percentages are similar. But what is consistent, as I mentioned, is the relatively low amount of people who are overall making it through the process relative to the number of hires. But I would keep in mind that these positions, these announcements are posted for an entire year. In 2018, as you saw, or as you can see, 32 African-American candidates were hired compared to 12 Hispanic candidates and 19 white or non-Hispanic candidates for this year. And you can see as you look at some of the bullets below, again, if you see African-American candidates make up a significant percent of the applicant pool, but then a smaller percent, relatively speaking, of the candidates that are actually hired. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so just a summary, as I kind of touched on this already. Minority or diverse candidates comprise a larger percentage of the candidate pool, but they're hired at a lesser or lower rate when compared to non-minority candidates. And this was the case for all 3 years that we've shared. A significant percent of all candidates who apply ultimately are not hired. Most candidates elect actually not to continue in the process. Again, you'll see some data on that. So candidates essentially are deselecting or removing themselves from the process if they don't respond to us or respond to the next step in the process as far as being hired. And then African-American candidates that I shared comprise the largest amount of candidates who applied for each of the 3 years, right? However, they were less likely to be hired compared to their white or Hispanic counterparts. All right, we'll go to the promotional process next, okay? All right, in terms of the promotional process and examination, we have the non-competitive and competitive examinations. The non-competitive examinations are focused on the police first class and the corporate ranks of the force. And this is guided or based on collective bargaining agreements. So these tests are done at a certain amount of times per year, a certain time per year, just based on the collective bargaining agreement. It's a written examination with an established passing score of 70%. Right? And for these ranks, all non-competitive promotional candidates who were successful on the exam, they are promoted. All right, for the competitive ranks, or which include sergeant, lieutenant, and the captain, there's skill assessment, all right, the practical examination, and that's a requirement in terms of completion. So it's popping up here. Also, okay, all right. In addition to the written assessment, there's an assessment center. Both of these are evaluated as far as selections for promotion. And again, this is for the sergeant, the lieutenant, and the captain ranks. I'll defer to Lieutenant Bath. Is there anything you would want to share on the promotional examination process?
Sorry, I was muted. Okay. In the non-competitive and competitive examinations, there are 2 ranks which are eligible for that, which is police officer first class and corporal. And there is a certain duration you have to be on in order to take one of those tests. They are given twice a year, and they have multiple choice questions, and you have to score 70% to pass those. That's the only requirement. Written exam is the only requirement. In competitive examinations, the exam is divided into 2 different parts. One is a written exam, and the second is an assessment center. In written exam, it's the same multiple choice exam. You score whatever you score in the written exam. That actually runs some part of the total score. Then in the assessment center, we have assessors which are from outside our department. They come in and they assess the situations which are presented to the officers. And the officers record those situations in a video recording, and they are presented to the assessors. Then the assessors are the one which actually give you the points, and you get scored based on those points. And then we get a total score, and then there is a merit list which is made based on how you scored in both of those exams. And then you get promoted as your positions get available. That list is good for until 60 days till the next sergeant, lieutenant, or captain exam.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Lieutenant
you.
Bear. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So as we've, based on the information we've shared, right, there are some concurrent and ongoing efforts that we have. Again, the challenges, as you saw in the slides that show the applicant and hiring data, is that there's diversity within the groups that are ultimately hired. However, we have opportunities relative to hiring minority or diverse groups relative to the percentage of the applicants or the number that apply. That's where an opportunity does exist. So with that in mind, we're going to continue enhancing our partnership and collaboration between OHRM and the Police Recruiting Division. What this means in short, we'll want to leverage the expertise of both groups, the recruiting expertise, the technical expertise of the police officers, and then essentially work with the community, whether it be at a job fair or community-based events. Take an approach, keep approaching this with a collaborative mindset and effort where we're able to discuss the position itself, if we are outside, the requirements for the role, but also what are these things that make it such an attractive career, the benefits, serving the county, things along those lines. So we envision and will continue a collaborative effort as we continue to engage our external groups. Next, we'll continue to utilize our Equal Employment Opportunity Report. That's going to give us not only information on the existing workforce, what does our workforce look like, those who are employed, but also for those groups that we're recruiting from. What jurisdictions are we recruiting from? What's the availability of Hispanic candidates? What's the availability of African-American candidates? So we're essentially going to use that information to guide us in terms of ensuring the workforce is representative of the communities in which we serve. And the EEO report will help us to do that. In terms of continuing the partnership, working with and conducting community and career information sessions, this piece is critical because these roles that are critical to the community, there's certainly a lot of responsibility that a police officer has. It is important that we share those things up front with candidates. And candidates may make decisions for themselves, which frankly they do, if they are or not interested in the roles. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We want to identify the best of the best and people who are fully committed to such a critical role within the community. So engaging in these external sessions, sharing information on the benefits, on the compensation, on the opportunities, conducting the realistic job preview or the ride along that was discussed earlier. These are all things that better inform candidates, but also help us and help them in terms of making the right career decision. I think was asked earlier about some of our engagement with various groups within the community. It's already existing in terms of working with colleges, universities, not only high schools, but also middle schools. In certain times of the year, these things are done. Schools typically have career fairs and career days at a certain time of the year. So these are efforts that are ongoing. Certainly moving these to a virtual format is what's going to be critical now. And those are things that we're going to have to change as well as everyone else. Lastly, or next, we have the engagement with the leaders. Thank you. With the leaders from the police department, managers, and working with community-based organizations to continue, I would say, along with the last slide, to brand the career opportunity, to share information on the recruitment process, on the career opportunities, as I mentioned. That's going to be a huge part of this process. The current environment, some may say, is probably one where some may see it as more challenging in terms of identifying candidates for police officers. But I would choose to look at the positive side and said, I believe there are people who may be more committed to make a difference and to join the police force. And we certainly want to take advantage of that opportunity. And we'll do that by partnering with our public information officers, enhancing what we're already doing in terms of branding and marketing, and essentially restarting that with a different approach, given the current environment, to market and promote the career opportunities within the public safety sector. All right. Okay. All right, thank you. And now we're into the appendix, but some of the questions, I'm sure, as you looked at the overall applicant data, right, you saw, as I mentioned, a significant amount of people aren't actually making it through the process. And a lot of that is sometimes some people deselecting. We've got information from 2020, 18, and 19, the top 10 reasons as candidates were not selected. So you can see some of those reasons now, and candidates would essentially provide some of these responses, whether it be when they apply and then the application is evaluated, or later on in the process based on information that's provided to the investigators. All right, and where you see the auto DQ, that's where someone completes the application, provides the information, and based on those established criteria, which are there, that's essentially kind of built into the system. So this is not subjective where a human being, if you will, or human beings are making the decision. These are established criteria based on the commissions. Those are already built into our application process, and candidates will respond to the questions that are asked. And then this is where you'll see some of the results from that. Before we get any questions, I definitely want to go to the next two slides, which is just sharing similar information, but different years. Here you can see in this one what was number one in 2019, which I believe was the year we had about 2,400 applicants. A significant amount of the applicants did not respond, which would have moved them to the next step in the process. All right, the announcement closes at a certain time. So again, if someone is not responding, then we're unable to engage and reach them. You do see number 3, the automatic disqualification for the marijuana usage. All right. Okay, and I think we're set. I think certainly we are open to questions.
I believe Judge Williams had a question. Judge Williams?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I was just curious about persons who had been arrested, maybe not convicted. And also in Maryland, isn't the small amount of marijuana no longer criminal? And I was just wondering whether you all are making any exceptions to that.
Sir, I will answer that to the marijuana question you have. MPCTC has set up a certain set of standards. In that standards, there's a certain number they have decided that if you have smoked marijuana under that number, then you are you will be eligible to be a police officer. But if you are above that number, then you get disqualified. We cannot have any marijuana usage in the past 3 years since you have, from the time you filled out the application, for the past 3 years, you should not have any marijuana usage in the history. So if it's prior to 3 years, it's greater than 3 years, and under that certain number, then we go ahead and give consideration to the candidates.
All right. What about arrests with no convictions?
There also has to be certain, you have to have a probation before judgment on misdemeanor charges. Any felonies or anything which is in a serious nature are basically our auto disqualifier. And if you have been arrested and the charges have been dropped and it's greater than 3 years, there should be nothing in the past 3 years. If it's greater than 3 years, then we give you consideration, and then you are eligible and you get certified under MPCTC standards.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Jackson and Ms. Gutierrez, I think your questions were answered by Lieutenant Harvin. Either of you want to ask anything further?
I think, thank you, Judge. I think in part my questions were answered. I just wondered if we have, if there's a breakdown in terms of demographics for the disqualifiers. And I think maybe one of the deputy chiefs said that he would provide that information.
Tara, this is Sean. Yes, we do actually have it at all years by demographics. So we can absolutely share that with the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
And Judge Lamas, if I could just clarify, my question was partially answered. I saw that they will provide the preliminary questionnaire, but I also wanted to follow up with the interview questions, whether these were standard template questions or whether the interviewer comes up with them, and if so, what it's based on.
Okay, so for the oral board questions, those are standard questions, and we have utilized the help of Field Consulting Group, which is basically a liaison with the county, and they are the ones who actually prepare all the questions for us. And they are set questions, same questions asked to every candidate, and there's actually a point based. So kind of answer you give, there's a certain criteria. They have decided that if you have given all the responses which we are required for that question, you will get 5 points. And if you just did not answer it, you get 1 point. So in between anything, the points will go up and down. So depending on the candidates. And just like I mentioned before, OHRM representative stays in the room with us to make sure that we are not going out of the line, or we're not asking any questions which are not part of the list.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morning, you had a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Judge. My question is, the person that conducts the psychological testing, what are their qualifications? Are they a psychiatrist or psychologist?
This is Sean. They are psychologists, and I apologize, I'm off camera. And I will share what the qualifications. I'll actually make sure that the committee has a copy of the job description that's used to source them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Oriata?
Thank you. I had just a few questions. One, we're looking at the breakdown of the applications. Do you also have the breakdown in gender? I saw the breakdown by race. Can we get that data as well?
By gender, I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong, Conrad. We do,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
we can get that as well. No problem.
Perfect, thank you. And then also, I saw a not selected as one of the ranking reasons, and so I just wanted to know what that meant.
Okay. Can we follow up? I think, Conrad, when we were breaking that information down, it was a couple of different reasons. Some of because they didn't complete the application, and some they just self-selected not to continue the process.
Okay. And then the last question is follow up to the question around marijuana usage. It was noted that there's a certain amount or amount of times, just like a clarification on what that number of times is in the window, and for changing that process or qualification, like who owns, or how could you update that to be more aligned with current where we are, honestly, with like marijuana usage?
Yeah. And Lieutenant Bath, I think you can probably speak to it, but a lot of this is regulated by the state and actually is in the actual COMAR, which is interesting, right? So even, the background process is actually in the COMAR, and we can actually circulate that as well. It doesn't necessarily speak to how it has to be done. For example, how the interviews need to be done, that, like currently, we would actually go out to do them. So it doesn't say how, but it does explicitly say what has to be done. Lieutenant Bath, and you are much more, you look at this on a daily basis in terms of limits and how much. So if you could answer the question on marijuana, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am. I will, just like you have referred, I will refer all the participants to mdle.net, which is a Maryland law enforcement website. You can actually log into this website and research on a COMAR manual, because all our standards are based on COMAR. And just like I said, there should not be any marijuana usage in the past 3 years since you put in from the time you put in an application. And then after that, there is a certain amount which has been decided. And I will actually refer you to COMAR manual, because that's a public record, and you can actually go and get more information from there.
And one more thing, just because you mentioned like this is standard across the board. So when you talk about the application process, and you said a lot of people sometimes just opt out. So would you say that our application process is the standard for from a competitive perspective in the DMV, or is it harder, or what that might look like?
Ma'am, our hiring process is very, very competitive with the other departments in the jurisdiction. The only thing I will mention is when a candidate applies for a police officer with Prince George's County, there is a chance that they have already put in applications with Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Charles County, Calvert County, MPDC, and all the major police departments in the area. And then, so everybody's background process runs side by side. So they actually, so this is a standard practice. They actually wait for whoever actually finishes up their process faster as compared to the other jurisdiction. And I will also like to mention there are some departments in the area which will actually put in applicants into the academy before even their background is finished completely. So they will actually put them in the academy, and then if the background reveals something, they will actually pull them out of the academy and terminate them. So we actually wait for the entire background process to be finished before we start up the academy process. There are some departments in the area which also offer hiring bonuses to the candidate. So people who are financially constrained, they actually look at the upfront hiring bonus and they go and incline towards that department more.
Thank you.
And I would share that just based off of my experience, this is probably one of the most in-depth background check processes that I've seen. And, I've worked in a number of different counties. It's very thorough, but again, I don't question what we're doing. I just question more how we're going about doing it. And are we losing, candidates in the process? It's a valid question. I think we should be looking at it. And, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that the competing jurisdictions may even rely on us sometimes because of the thoroughness of our background process. I could see them calling and asking, did this candidate go through your process? What did you find, months later? Just because we are very thorough in it.
And this is Conrad again. I'll share that from a competition perspective, it is not just only in the jurisdictions. We have candidates that apply to multiple or for multiple opportunities within the county itself. So there's competition from that perspective also.
Can I speak for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Streeter. You're next.
This is Archie O'Neill.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was Mr. Streeter. Mr. Streeter is next, right. And then Mr. O'Neill will get you.
Okay, I just wanted to know if you had percentage goals for hiring along the lines of race and gender and so forth that reflect the overall population in the county, and whether or not you also use that same, you have an eye towards those goals as you do go through your promotion process.
That's a question I think we'll follow up on. So the percentage of goals, meaning a specific number that we're looking to hire.
Is there a percentage that you're looking for to hire people that's more reflective of what our communities look like along the same percentage lines?
There's not an act, as far as I know, and I think it was Director, Deputy Chief Harvin was trying to unmute. I do believe that there is not an actual full percentage, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, Deputy Chief.
That's actually correct. There isn't a
number,
an exact number.
Okay, thank you.
But what it is that we strive for, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is to make sure that the demographic matches the makeup of our communities. And, to the extent that you can speak to whether or not that's true at this point would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. O'Neill.
Sure. I'm looking at your numbers that you gave as far as applicants who apply. And based on your years, you're talking about 122 on a 12-month, or what should say 1 month. You had 122 applicants to apply in a sense, on average. 19, 152, 18, 192. At least I want to know the pass fail rate of those applicants, for one. Two, dealing with your polygraph or CSDA or polygraph, whatever one you administer. the failure rate there, because one of the things that the lieutenant said back, he said there was either pass or fail. You have a certain group of inconclusive that's also in that group. So we need to know on that. And also the polygraphs, I like to see the SOP. So if you got, you know, a CDE essay or you doing the polygraph, I'd like to see your SOP on that, how that works, what questions are being asked, because that's critical when you know with the polygraph. Now, when you look at your numbers, and just based on your numbers, I saw how many they were DQ'd and how many was non-select. The non-select group, I like to know where they were non-selected at, because you can let people linger and at the end of the process and make them non-select. And with only 4 investigators, my question on that is how many cases will an investigator get? Because we know to do 20 cases is going to take you 3 to 4 months. That's if you assign 20 cases. Now, if you assign 5 cases based on the number of applicants you have, you're not going to get through the process. So that's why I'm coming to the non-select part, because I need to know how many people got through the process and how many people didn't get through the process. Because you can make people non-select after the process. And the only way we're going to know that is we look at the file. Not saying we have to, but I just want to make sure you understand how that process really works.
Okay. So what we'll do is follow up with the pass-fail rate. I heard the request for the SOP for the polygraph, also the non-selects. At what point are they are people non-selecting? I'll say just based on some of the data that we have, the lack of responses certainly are earlier in the process. What we typically see is people who are moving further along in the process. They're more committed, especially since they know they're closer to actually earning the or getting the opportunity. But we can provide more detail on those things.
Mr. Samuel, one other thing too. These people were in the process, where would they fall out? Will they fall out in the initial part of the process, the polygraph, the psychological, the medical, whatever it may be? How do we notify these people? Do we send them a letter immediately? And what's the appeal process? What is the appeal process in case somebody make a mistake?
Well, if I can touch on it, the appeal process, there's a letter that's sent. If you want to appeal your case, that goes directly to the PSI case manager, who actually review the case file.
All right, if there's nothing else, let's thank Ms. Stokes and Mr. Samuels and everyone. This was a fascinating and interesting presentation. We very much appreciate your time, and we very much appreciate your willingness to follow through and provide us the information that the members have requested. But thank you very much. We're at 6:34 and we have one more presentation from Lieutenant Fowle. So let's move on to that. Thank you very much, sir and ma'am. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Judge, that presentation will be presented by Major Alexander for training and education.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I have Lieutenant Fowle.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Bill Alexander. I met you all the last time. It's a pleasure to be back. I appreciate the opportunity to come back and answer some of the questions that we didn't quite get to the last time. So can the web admin make me a host, please, so I can share my screen? Oh, never mind. Lieutenant Harvin is on it. So I'm going to go through these slides relatively quickly. I don't want to kill you by death by PowerPoint. This is the organizational structure, as you've already seen. LT, you can go to the next slide. This is the exact same screen I showed you last time, just as a sort of topical reminder. We usually have 3 classes at any given time. MPTC requires 750 hours of basic training for a recruit officer. We do almost twice that at 1350. And we've given them a bunch of classes that MPTC does not mandate. LT, you can go to the next slide. This is, again, is also the exact same slide I showed you last time. You all had some questions about the breakdown, the further breakdown of these hours here. And offline, I believe you've been sent by Lieutenant Harvin a full breakdown of an entire academy class. It explains to you exactly down to the hour what each recruit sees and does during their academy experience. If you all have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me offline. Lieutenant Harvin can give you my email. I'd be happy to answer any direct questions on that. LT, you can go to the next slide. So one of the questions I know Delegate Washington specifically asked the last time, because you all had some questions about how much de-escalation training we give the recruits. And I told you at the time that I would be hard pressed to quantify an exact hour because it's so enmeshed with almost every aspect of the training academy. So this is my best effort to give you some idea of at least the topical areas within the academy where de-escalation plays a part. As you can see there, down there, that's a total of 511 hours. Now, I would say to you very frankly, that does not mean for 511 hours we're talking ad nauseum about de-escalation. But what I am saying to you is each one of those major blocks of instructions includes us talking about using scenarios, using role plays, using classroom time to talk about effective ways to use either communication or in-person skills, or even limited uses of force to prevent something from escalating. So I hope that that gives you some sense of how enmeshed in the academy the idea of de-escalation is. LT, next slide. This is a full breakdown of the crisis intervention week. It's a full 40-hour week, and this is the sort of topical overview of each part of that week. And this does not include an additional 8 hours where we do, emergency commitments. So 48 hours total on mental health. And again, this is also, it's a direct 48 hours, but many of the 511 hours I just talked about on the previous slide, this is also enmeshed in there, talking about mental health and mental awareness and how to deal with folks with mental disabilities. Some of those role plays and scenarios and other topical areas like arrest procedures and patrol procedures and survival tactics, that's also a part of the mental health things. You know, they've learned the basics and now can they put it into practice. So they're getting a direct 48 hours classroom time, but on top of that, they're also required to demonstrate that they've learned some of these areas in the role play scenarios. LT, next slide. You also asked about the recurring annual in-service. If you remember, I told you MPTC requires 18 hours for every police officer, every sworn officer to get annual in-service training. We do 30 plus an additional 10 at the range. So it's a full week of training. The portions I have here in yellow are what we are teaching in calendar year 2020. And the topics in white are what we have taught recurringly over the last about 8 years. I also sent you this offline. I gave you the last, from 2012, the annual schedule that we've done for in-service, and each of those documents provide a sort of a topical overview of what the title here listed is. So I'm not going to read down this each class individually, but it does give you some idea of what we have taught and are teaching recurringly. LT, next slide. One of the questions last time you all asked was, were we teaching the 6 pillars mentioned in the 21st Century Policing report commissioned by then President Obama? We do. It's enmeshed throughout the academy. We don't have a specific class called 6 Pillars of 21st Century Policing, but all of these topics are ingrained deeply within the academy experience. LT, next slide. And I believe this is the last slide. Someone had a question last time if we teach something specific to very young children, 5 years old or younger. We don't teach anything specific that to basic recruits, but investigators who deal with crimes, which have involved with them young children, such as domestic violence or child abuse, those investigators take a class from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It's called Child First. And that class is specifically targeted to people who have contact with or association with young children who are either victims of or associated with some form of violence or trauma. So that was my last slide. I know I went through those very quickly in an effort to respect your time, but if anyone has a specific question, I would happily stay here all night to answer anything and everything you got.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, doesn't look like there's any questions.
I'm sorry, I have just one clarifying question.
Okay. Go ahead.
The breakdown that you did where it was in yellow and white, the breakdown in yellow, you're saying that's what's mandatory for 2020 training, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I have a question, sir. So the academy is responsible for training for all sworn officers throughout the year, correct? Including executive officers?
There is a small training block for executive officers. I'm referring to captains and above. They generally attend 4 hours of in-service training. That's not mandated by MPTC. MPTC does not require actually any training for captains and above. They're sort of senior managers. So they're not receiving the same training as a rank and file officer who might respond to a 911 call.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
I have a quick question, Judge, if I can ask.
Sure.
I saw it.
Judge,
Yes, thank you. I saw something on the law of arrest and search and seizure. How much training do you give officers on identification procedures such as show-ups and lineups and photographic arrays, and also testifying and taking statements from individuals? How much time do you spend on that?
I could certainly offline get you an exact number. That is a deep topic covered across a wide variety of subjects, everything from moot or mock court, which the judge is probably familiar with, all the way through search and seizure. We do mock search warrants for them. We do investigative steps. Now, you're specifically, one of the things you mentioned was lineups. That is sort of an advanced topic normally reserved for investigators. So, rank and file first day officers would not be out on the street necessarily doing a photo array, but we do topically cover it. But there's a wide variety of subjects that touch on almost everything you just talked about, and they at least touch and see that to some level during their time in the academy.
Okay, thank you.
anyone else have any questions for Lieutenant Alexander? Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate your time.
We very much appreciate your time. I know we kept you longer than you thought possible, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Thanks. All right, the next item on our agenda are action items. Anyone have anything they want to say about that? I think the next action item for us to consider is our scheduling of the subcommittees and our scheduling of more meetings. And we will do that and we will get back to you. Ms. Oriata, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, from the last presentation, there was some information that we didn't get into, for example, like crime statistical data. So I was just curious, is there going to be a third presentation by the police department to cover the rest of the original presentation?
Judge, I'll speak to that. The police department answered the questions from the first, from their last presentation. The questions that were emailed to the group. Some of the documents were very large, so there are several attachments to it. What's going to happen is those documents will be uploaded to the Microsoft Teams folder, and you guys will be able to go there and view the extensive data. But there's a master document that was emailed with all the questions that you had from the previous. But again, because the data was so large, we had to do several attachments, and that'll be in the Microsoft folder this evening.
Right, but there was, they didn't finish the presentation. I think they stopped on slide 43. Yes. So will they actually present the rest of that data? Present the rest of their presentation?
What's going to happen is Delegate Washington and Judge Lamassney will have, I know the internal affairs piece, I think they went through rather quickly. That's some of the things that they're going to be discussing, how to bring back sections of the presentation so you can focus more specifically as we did today. So that's in discussion with the co-chairs.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any other items they wish to bring up at this time? Anything at all? Lieutenant Harvin, anything?
In closing, Delegate Washington had to step off of this call into another call, but we're going to email the work group subcommittees and the teams. You guys will be assigned 2 team members, will be your admin support groups. So this evening or by tomorrow afternoon, you should have the list of all of the work groups and your assigned administrative teams for each subcommittee.
Very good. All right, if no one has anything further, we can adjourn. Anything further? All right, we'll be in touch with the next meeting. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Good night.
too.
Good
Good
night.
night.